First order of business is approval of our February 18th work session minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next order of business is something that Kara has talked about a while back and requested this be put on a work session. And obviously, there's been conversations, I know with John and Jonathan on this. We all got John's email with his memorandum on affordable housing. So, Kara, do you want to just say a few words about how this came about, or do you want us just to right into it?
I'll just give kind of a brief thing of kind of why I've been championing this for a few years now. But so I know a lot of us have heard from different residents kind of concerned about the lack of availability for housing for kind of starter homes, homes that older adults on fixed incomes can afford, and just kind of how those are kind of disappearing in Kirkwood right now. And then obviously there's kind of a nationwide issue of lack of affordability when it comes to homes. I think it was 2019. So almost 2 years ago, I met with a few council members of some surrounding municipalities, and we just kind of spitballed ideas to see what they were doing to kind of combat this issue and what we could do. And kind of from that meeting, I know Webster passed kind of a discriminatory thing back in the fall of 19. And then the county also created, I think it's called the Affordable Housing Trust Fund back in the winter of 19. So that's kind of where this all started with. And so I'll just kind of let the professionals take it from here.
That's fine. Russ, Jonathan, John, do you want to make any initial comments on any of this?
I'll just start out the discussion because staff is well aware of concerns about affordability within the city of Kirkwood. We've heard many times that people want to have their sons and daughters be able to come back home and buy a house, or not have to leave Kirkwood to go to a more affordable place because of the land values and so forth and the high demand in Kirkwood. We've had it suggested a number of times that if there are apartment complexes, perhaps some portion could be workforce type apartments or other rent adjustment type apartments, something that is, some percentage of the overall is held for affordability. We on the Human Rights Commission, which has taken this up a number of times and discussed the possibilities and the need or perceived need that there is for affordable housing in Kirkwood. It's a difficult nut to crack in the sense that in order to address some of these aspects, there is certainly market intervention required. At what level and what type of market intervention is really up for discussion. And I think that's the purpose of today, is to whether City Council is interested in that approach, or if they're looking at something more passive, whereby we work with developers and just request that they consider things along those lines. That's more of a passive approach. So, and there's also zoning aspects. There's inclusionary zoning, as John wrote about in his memo. There's also certain aspects of our current approach to building and zoning that goes counter to affordability. When you have a lot of restrictions on how things have to be built and designed, that tends to cost more for the builder and the developer. So that takes away from some of the affordability in the long run. So those are just considerations. I just wanted to put those out on the table, and we can take it from there.
Yeah,
Jonathan, do you want to chime in, or do you want me to?
Feel free to, Mr. Hessel.
All right. Well, Kara raised this issue to my office. I'm going to say it was last summer, somewhere in that range. And we did a fair amount of research, and we did not come up with, and I'm not familiar with St. Louis County or Webster Grove's affordable housing when it comes to starter homes and things of that nature. The material and information that we read certainly does identify that if the city wants to fund homes, then it can, of course, set up some kind of a trust fund where the city will pay developers to build a home. So you have to find the right market, you have to find the right location to build these homes, and then you can sell them at a price that other homes, less than what other homes are selling for. The difficulty you run into that is at what point in time do you determine that that current owner can or cannot sell that home at market value? And that's the issue that you're going to run into. So if we have someone or allow someone to build a home, and we say, okay, we're going to build her, we know that this house is going to cost $200,000 to build. We're going to contribute $100,000. I'm making all these numbers up, but that means that you can only sell this house for $100,000. All right. Then you run into an issue is who gets it? What criteria are you going to use to determine that this person or this family is entitled to that home? Let's assume we use economics, and that's why I asked Jonathan if he wanted to go first, because he's going to have to, or someone within his department is going to have to regulate that. So the example I used with Jonathan is right out of college, none of us had any money. I would have qualified for all sorts of financial benefits because I had nothing but debt. Now, X number of years later, I'm in a different economic situation. So how do we monitor when that family or when that person is no longer qualified? Again, I think Jonathan experienced some of that when he was down in Joplin. So that, again, I'd have to do a lot more research and analysis to deal with the starter home type of situations. What we looked at was really not, terminology is not affordable housing, it's inclusionary zoning. It's really aimed at multifamily zoning, and whether or not, and I've seen this with other cities, whether or not you're going to require the developer to include within that development certain apartments that are going to be priced at a rent that is more affordable than others. Okay, so we've now injected ourselves into that whole economics, and in order to do that, typically you're going to have to reward that developer in some way, incentivize that developer in some way, either by waiving costs, waiving fees, or having, again, a fund is going to be used to do that. Because otherwise, what they're going to do is they're going to allocate X number of apartments at this affordable price and Y at the price, the going price. And of course, Y is going to have to be higher now because you reduced X. It's pretty simple economics when you come to that. And then you run into the same issue as to, all right, I rented this apartment because I qualified. Now I take in a roommate, or my economic situation changes. So you have to continually monitor this to determine whether or not those who were entitled to have this apartment at a lesser rent, how long do they get to stay there? And then, of course, you run into the dynamics. And again, there's a lot of literature on that. It is whether or not neighbors become jealous or disenchanted and those kinds of things. Those are all not legal issues, but those are issues that you all have to confront. At the end of the day, as the memo suggests, there's mixed views on, again, I'm just addressing on the inclusionary zoning, but I suggest the same principles are applicable when you're going to try to do starter homes or residential, single family residential homes, just more complicated because you're only talking about one. Having said that, I wish there was an easy solution. We've all experienced, I'd love it. My daughter could afford to buy a home in Kirkwood. She can't. It's that simple, and it's sad. Well, that's the good news and the bad news. As I've said to many of you, the other city I represent, Florissant, they would love to have this problem.
I think maybe the only, well, I'll add a few things, I guess. So I did, yeah, when I worked for Joplin for about 4 years, they were, and I won't go into, if any of you have specific questions, I'll be happy to get into detail, but they were a direct recipient annually of HUD, CDBG, and home funds. They got about $1.2 million annually to administer housing and public service grant programs. And I was one. There were 3 of us that were dedicated to those funds. And we subgranted the funds to nonprofits who also had staff. And it's a lot of staff that's needed to monitor those things that John was talking about, as far as monitoring the fact that they stay affordable if it's rental. And then if it's rental that we're talking about, each time the tenant changes, you have to recertify them, right? And that can happen frequently. And then if you're talking about home ownership, we would work with Habitat for Humanity, and there are certain federal dollars are different. If we're going to be different, it would be different than if we're going to use local money for like a trust fund, but you would want to set it up in a similar way. As was mentioned, there are always some sort of deed restrictions or clawback provisions that also get difficult after it fades out after 5 years, 10 years. And then after that, it's forgivable, right? So there's all these certain things that, again, I'll be happy to answer those questions if you want to go into that detail, but I just want to mention that in the context of, it is certainly an admirable goal. And I think something that is definitely worth talking about and pursuing. And so I don't want this to deter that at all, but there are a lot of nuances in it. And I'll back on the flip side, or maybe to take another approach from it. The other piece that I want to kind of remind everybody from a zoning perspective, that we have been doing, and I'm not saying it needs to stop there, but we have had the discussions over the past few years about increasing density where possible, opening our options to accessory dwelling units, which our new code that's adopted now has that option, right? We're kind of dipping our toes in the water of having it as a special use permit and seeing how it goes. But these are all things, accessory dwelling units, increased density, those are nationwide. Those are the most common ways to allow for affordability, right? Now, it doesn't, I've said it before, I'll stress it doesn't guarantee affordability, because they can still, if a developer can rent, all 170 units at market rate, then they will do that, right? Unless they're incentivized, as John mentioned, unless they're incentivized to do differently. And the comparison of the other scenario, I guess, that John mentioned, if we say require 5% of the units or whatever the number is to be affordable, and they have to the project has to have those costs offset, and they could raise the rents on the market rate units, but at some point they won't get those rents, right? So they can't really expect too much more than market rate. And in their financial models, it just becomes no project, right? So the other thing is we have to weigh the market and know that the incentive has to be high enough to make it economically feasible, right? So just be aware of that. And there's no magic number to that. Every project's going to be different. It's all going to be, structured differently. But anyway, so I just don't want people to lose the fact that we have been taking strides in the missing middle, our missing middle zoning district that we added now. That's a whole new mid-range, missing middle, small scale multifamily district that's now available for people to start looking to make more land available to multifamily housing, which is the quickest way to get the option for more affordable units. So I'll leave it at that.
And let me just also add to that, Mayor. Kirkwood's really experienced, as far as I know, related to the TIF funds from the Meacham Park redevelopment project, I'm sure that many of you will recall that there was allocated out of those TIF funds a significant amount of monies that could be used for home improvement. And it worked quite well. And I'll just make up a number. Allocate $10,000 for someone to improve their existing home. And then every year, the obligation was to remain for 5 years. And every year, 1/5 of that would come off, or build a new home, things of that nature. And it worked pretty well. I will tell you that there was some backlash where some people got confused as if the city was trying to take their homes from them or prevent them from selling their homes, because we had these home improvement deeds of trust against their homes. So there was some confusion about that. We did build some homes as well, relatively modest success. That's an example of, there was an area, there was funds available, and you could provide affordable housing under those circumstances.
Before we go around, Kara, is this kind of on the track? You know, because when the term affordable housing is used, I think, each of us on this meeting and the whole community could have different thoughts of what that means. I want to make sure we're kind of on the track of what you're talking about or thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jonathan kind of hit on a few things that I think sometimes gets missed. You know, we are such a single family oriented community. I think we forget that accessory unit, the small, what was it, Jonathan? The accessory dwelling units
in the back.
Yeah, the smaller things. And then obviously the multi-family apartments and stuff, I think are just opportunities I wanted us to discuss and get on the forefront when we're looking at solutions to that. So yeah, all of that covers it.
Yeah. Was there, any thought, because I know you and I got together once and talked about it, about the single family, because most of what I hear, most of us here really has to do with, the single families, smaller homes, being, torn down for newer ones to get put up. I don't want to go in too many different directions this evening. If that's, was that part of your thought process too, Kara?
I mean, not really, because I think that is a whole nother beast. I think that's kind of the whole infill aspect that maybe needs to be addressed separately. Yeah, I just think maybe we need to just as a group decide, we are more open to more apartments and density, and we're willing to give up this zoning thing for the developer, or, X, Y, and Z. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of this in places where building is just rampant, whether it's Dallas, Denver, Charlotte, any of those places. When you have several thousand either home developments or several thousand apartment units, that's a very common thing. But when you're dealing with huge numbers like that, it's much easier to do. I know with what we have, it's probably more difficult to do unless we have some kind of funds available for that. I think and Jonathan mentioned it. In terms of affordable, if we want to talk just affordable housing in general, not necessarily just single family homes. Density is how we get there. I know that's kind of a foreign thing for Kirkwood, but density is how you make housing, whether it's purchase or rent, affordable. So the more you have, the more affordable it's going to be. So. Karen, do you want to say anything else before we go to any other comments from anybody?
No, I just like everyone else is good to go.
Good. All right. I'll go different way. Maggie, you want to go first tonight?
Sure. I'm extremely interested in this and want to know more. I probably will give you a call, Jonathan, to come to sit in with you, but as much as anybody can sit in with anyone these days. I'm wondering, I know it was probably a year ago. I went to an event with a Webster Groves council member, alderman, whatever she was. And I'm blanking on her name, but I can find it. And they were doing a lot with it at that point. This is probably a good year ago. So I already have a note to myself. I know how to find who she is, because I'd love to know, as John Hessel always says, we don't need to recreate a wheel. Let's find out what people are doing around us. I will find out what her name was and contact her and see. I don't, unless you all have already talked with all of them, and then I won't bug them.
It might have been Laura Arnold. That's who I've worked with, Maggie.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd recommend, yeah.
Okay. Well, not to butt in on what you've already done, I think I'd like to sit down with her anyway, as much as anybody can, and just kind of get, like I said, as John Hessel says, let's find out what's going on around the state and see if we can not recreate a wheel, because I would like to recreate this wheel.
All right.
That's
Thanks,
it.
Maggie. Let's see, Wallace?
Okay, thanks, Tim. Yeah, so let me a little background. My family has been involved in this subject for better than 50 years, and that's in everything from suburban single-family homes to multifamily to high-rise, 500-unit high-rises in Chicago. And if there's a pitfall out there that I'm not aware of, I'd be stunned. I guess we need to start as a council with what is our goal? So what do we hope to accomplish? Is it social diversity? Is it racial diversity, financial, economic diversity, those kinds of things? It's very difficult for municipalities to be successful with multifamily units, because it requires incredible amount of involvement in how you certify residents who are going to move into your units, because you get that wrong and it creates a world of trouble for you. And you have to be willing to be pretty thick-skinned, because you will get a lot of accusations. If you get any kind of federal money, you lose the key to the gate. If you get the feds in, and even if it's state, because that's usually a pass through from the feds, then it's all their game. And if anybody can find a successful one in the country, I'd be happy to look at it. I just think those are difficult. I think our best bet is to stay with which is our core, that is single family units, and to deal with that on a rent control basis. You know, we have income impacted neighborhoods, and most of them were impacted by the city's zoning and our rezoning in surrounding areas, where we let light industrial, heavy industrial grow up around a small residential neighborhoods. The end result of those over time is that many of them have now become heavily rented single family homes. And you know, as the market becomes whatever it's going to become, one of two things happen. Either the owners, the landlords, get enough density in there that they decide to redevelop the whole thing and it goes market rate, and you get $600,000, $700,000 homes coming in and to replace all of the smaller, what we characterize as affordable single family homes. You know, and I'd have to get John involved in this, but in terms of establishing rent control for single family units, single family homes, where you get some control of the rise of rental rates, which keeps them more affordable for folks to come in. It also allows for them to have some assistance from external groups to help them with their rent. You can encourage ownership if you can incentivize the owners, the landlords, to create lease purchase deals, where modest income families, as they get older and develop more income, can then have the ability to buy that home with a portion of the rent over time. So that's where I would start. If I were going to lean anywhere, I'd look to see if how that would work for us, what it would look like in Kirkwood with single family homes, long before I'd be willing to take on multifamily.
All right. Liz, any comments, questions?
Well, one of the beauties that I've always felt that our community has is the longevity of families here. I mean, we have families that have been here 4 generations. And I agree with Wallace. I don't think multi-family apartments is going to help young people end up staying here. They need to create equity. So I agree with you that single family is the way to go. I thought that Webster, and I don't know, maybe Jonathan, has some kind of, you can't tear a house down unless it's in really bad shape or something along those lines. Is that a direction that we could ever go?
I'm not aware of an across the board requirement for Webster Groves. I'm sure they have. I would have to honestly look more into it. I'm sure they have requirements similar to ours for historic districts and structures. But as far as across the board, I'm not aware that they have a requirement that something be condemned to be torn down. Yeah.
Well, that's something that I'd like to know more about. If there's other communities that are doing something like that, because that's part of the problem with affordable housing being available to our young people. I think that's all I have to say right now.
Mark?
Well, I tell you, this is an interesting topic. I'm the liaison for the local housing authority, which is our HUD housing in Kirkwood. And, they have very strict regulations, they have inspections, and there's a lot to it. I think for me, starting out, with some type of voluntary program might be the way to go. But I think there's been a lot of points brought up in some of the pitfalls, and I think we should be very cautious, even though we hear from folks that we want affordable housing. The market, if you all look online, is going exactly the opposite way. And, that kind of success in Kirkwood has a downside, and the downside is it's very difficult to, number one, define what is affordable, and number two, to have somebody that can't afford an $800,000 home to come into Kirkwood. And as was mentioned, you've got somebody that's starting out young without a lot of resources. It can be very, very difficult. And, I think we should try and pursue all avenues that we can in order to possibly focus on the smaller existing homes that could be saved in Kirkwood, maybe through, monitoring zoning, something like that. I think it's just a lot of points that were made by John and Jonathan. It can be a slippery slope because, if we get into the market, are there unintended consequences? Do we negatively affect the market in Kirkwood? And that's something I know we all want to avoid, even though we want to do whatever we can to get affordable housing in Kirkwood. And, the definition of affordable, that's the tough one right there. What is affordable to us may not be to someone else. So I think we should have an open mind with this and maybe start with something voluntary to incentivize a builder to come in and work with the city. Out of the thousands of houses in Kirkwood and of all the land in Kirkwood, I would guess that it is not going to be a majority proportion of homes that would somehow fall into this category. Not only with the newer houses being built in Kirkwood, but a lot of the existing homes that have been fixed up and that have increased in their value. So I know we all I think all of us on the council want to do everything we can to get affordable housing in Kirkwood. I think it's, there's not a lot of options to it without having negative consequences. I think we just need to be cautious with it. Thank you.
You know, I agree with that too, Mark. I think when people talk affordable housing in Kirkwood, they're talking about houses. I think the idea of seeing what other communities have done is good, you know, and if there would ever be a multifamily development where something could be worked out, that'd be fine. I think the whole thing with single family homes is, you know, we are property that people want to live here. Property values go here. I mean, they just skyrocket here because people want to be here. And I can tell you, I have zero desire to start telling people they can't tear down their house or they can't sell their house. I mean, I think that's that is just, you know, to me, that just goes way beyond what a city should do. And, you know, if you look around, many, I'm not saying most, and this is just my opinion from driving around, you know, a good number of houses, if not most, that get torn down are ones that, you know, people don't want to come in and spend the money to, you know, to renovate. And unless we're willing to come up with money somehow, I just don't know how we can, I mean, to help people buy and renovate, I just don't know how we can do it. I mean, I think, you know, in a place like Kirkwood, I think John mentioned it, there are cities everywhere. Most cities would love to have our problem, people wanting to come in and invest money. And Kirkwood is changing. We are, you know, we are an upper middle class community. I mean, and we all benefit from that. I mean, you know, I joke with people half seriously about affordable housing. Well, if your house could sell for 400, why don't you only take 300? Well, I can't do that. Well, why should somebody else? I just think it's something that we really, market plays a big role in this. And I think we just have to be very careful unless there's just money available to help people, you know, buy and renovate homes. We have to be willing to put up the money for it. So I think it's, you know, good to, you know, see what some of the other communities have done, but like Mark, maybe for different reasons, I think we've got to be careful on what we try to do here. So anything else? Wallace, I see your hand.
Yeah, a couple of things, because John touched on the Meacham Park redevelopment when we did the TIF down there. So there were a number of successes. We got some new homes built in there. We upgraded some homes, but the most important thing was we stabilized the market value in that neighborhood. And there's a new home going in right now that's under construction. It's also racially diversified. That's a number of white families who moved in, which had always been a predominantly, if not exclusively, Black neighborhood. So there were a lot of things that we won on that. And there's still a lot of empty lots over there that are available. One of the things that we have is a perception problem. And some of that goes with our vocabulary. Maybe we should adopt the term modest income housing, which is more specific to what we want rather than affordable. Because the guy who's got 800 houses and is looking for an affordable $800,000 home. So let's keep it classified where we want it to be. I think I once in one of the meetings referred to that as similar to the best auto dealership or number one dealership in Missouri. You know, who doesn't qualify for that? And also one of the things that we've never done is to overcome the perceptions that we have in our community. So from a marketing standpoint, I've talked to dozens of young couples who were out first looking for their home and say, hey, have you looked at Kirkwood? Oh, I can't afford Kirkwood. Now, they've never looked at Kirkwood. Their assumption is that everything in Kirkwood is worth $1 million. And anybody that looks through the for sale units or drives the community understands that's not true. So some of it has to do with us being able to have a marketing arm that's going out there, even if it's just working with real estate agents to say, hey, go look for some of these couples. There are people out there who can find homes in Kirkwood who aren't looking for the 5-bedroom, 300 acre home and try and market that. And that can get us there essentially at little to no cost to accomplish some of the things that we want to get done. But I think we do have to certainly start working on perceptions, and the terms that we use are important in developing that change.
Yeah. Wallace, that's a good point. And I meant to say something earlier, I forgot. Occasionally, I've not done it for a few weeks. I go on realtor.com and plug in, Kirkwood 63122. I think people will be amazed at how many homes are on the market in Kirkwood. They go fast for under, and I'll use $300,000. I mean, it is amazing. There's probably several dozen on there. So, I mean, it's not that, the homes in that price range that are selling are in good shape, and, and people want to, they don't have to come in and spend $250,000 to renovate it. There's realtor.com, and I mean, I do know they go fast, but there are homes. It could be 250, it could be 300. A lot of homes on the market in Kirkwood all the time, in those under that price range. So, all right. Do we have anything else from anybody right now? Kara, is this totally just like Taffy?
Yeah, no, this is kind of exactly what I was kind of hoping for, because I think we all kind of have different ideas and different end goals that we see as the most pressing. And, after talking to John about it, it was kind of like man, it would be real hard to get, there's a lot of pitfalls, like Wallace said too, of getting this solved. But I think the discussion was important, and I just thank you all for participating.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, well done, Kara.
So I guess at this point, somebody's going to kind of just check in and just kind of see what some of the other, you mentioned Webster, just kind of see what they're talking about.
We'll look at, if I could, Mayor, I would say that we'll attempt to look at suburban communities, not just in St. Louis. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly look at Webster, but I would look around other cities that are similar to St. Louis, like maybe Cleveland, Detroit. Detroit has some of the nicest suburbs in the country. And, I don't know what they do about affordability. I don't know if they have interest in affordability, but be interesting to see what some of these other Midwestern, similar type cities to St. Louis. There's a number of them. Minneapolis is another that might have some innovative thoughts here. So we'll be glad to look into that. Jonathan and I will make that a priority for us to get into and report back to council.
Yeah. Atlanta has some success units too.
Okay, we'll look at Atlanta as well.
In Minneapolis, since you mentioned it, Russ, and I know you know this, but they allow multifamily in all of their single family districts recently. So that's, if you want, there's a whole range of tools that so it's limited to, I think, maybe duplex, triplexes, but they are an extreme example of
that's a progressive viewpoint that they're taking, very much so.
Right. That's not what we mean by affordable, though, Jonathan.
Yeah. I'd make the move that Mark make the motion that we have multifamily within single family neighborhoods.
It is Minneapolis that did that. I'm sure there's others too. So, all right. Very good. Well, thank you all. Thanks, Kara, for bringing that up. That's obviously there's different opinions among the council on this, but that's okay. That's how we end up doing things. Everybody's viewpoints taken in. So very good. All right. I guess we'll move on now to bike lanes. I know this is something Liz brought it up a few months ago, but it's something that's been talked about. So Russ, I don't know if Liz, if you want to say anything first, or Russ, Bill, we can just get right into it.
Well, I'd be happy to say something. I just know that we've got some repainting and some roads that are being redone that I think are just prime for protected bike lanes. Lindemann is a great example. That is a very wide road. And I'd really like to see us have more protected bike lanes within Kirkwood. And it seems like Lindemann, with the project that we're going to be doing there, I'm not even sure when that's starting, but that seems like a great opportunity to try protected bike lanes. Another one that I want to bring up, it needs to be painted, I believe soon, is Rose Hill. And Bill, if you could maybe mention, but I would, with Rose Hill, I'd really like to see us try a protected bike lane where the parking goes next to the cars passing, and the protected bike lane is next to the curb. This is, something that really makes riders feel more comfortable to be away from that traffic. And it seems like a great road to kind of try that. I think we want to be a biking community. So this is something that we need to do more of.
Russ,
Well,
Bill?
to say we have looked at protected bike lanes. Bill's done a little analysis here, and he's going to describe what he's found.
Great.
Hey, Laurie, can you put up my slides?
Hey, just give me one moment.
All right.
Hold on, Bill. I clicked on the wrong one. Let me go back. I think it's also, hold on one second. I have to get right back into this. Okay, be patient with me. I clicked on the wrong one. Let me get to the right document. Here we go. And just let me know whenever you want me to move to the next screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, really what I wanted to start off with was just to go over, sort of like education. What type of bicycle facilities are out there compared to separated bike lanes, okay? And when we talk about separated bike lanes, we're also talking separated bike lanes is also protected bike lanes, and it's also cycle tracks. It's synonymous, okay? But right now we do have some signed routes for bicycle routes. You see us using the shared lane markings quite a bit throughout the city right now. And then we have some on street bike lanes, like on Rose Hill, and then that black section of Rose Hill. And then we do have some buffered bike lanes that we have on West Woodbine right now. And then we come up with separated bike lanes, okay? With separated bike lanes, they go into basically what's the degree of separation also becomes the degree of protection, okay? Because we'll get a little bit more into it. But then there's the other ones are side paths and off street trails, okay? And that's probably the most protected one, because those are not even within the pavement of the streets, okay? So Laura, you want to go back up to the next page? One of the things that we did was we took a look at the ones that Liz mentioned, Lindemann, Woodbine, and Rose Hill. And this is a NACTO guideline, okay? And what we did was we plotted out the ADTs and the posted speed limits to see where they fell within the NACTO guidelines, okay? Now these guidelines, they have what's called acceptable and desired, okay? And with what we have right now, based on the guidelines, you would see that a paved shoulder is sort of what we have on, I would say paved shoulders would be very similar to what Lindemann could have, okay, where it's just a white line down the street, okay? But you can see all three streets would fit that. And then a bike lane would basically, Woodbine would qualify as a bike lane. And then you see buffer bike lanes, okay? Now these are all just desired, okay? And when I say that, because you can go to the other side of this and the other side of acceptable, and put these on any street you want. But according to the guidelines, those three, that's where they would fall within the desired lane based on their speed and the volume of cars on there. Okay, so that's what they would be, and that's what we have right now on Lindeman. In that project is a buffered bike lane because that's where it fits within the NACTO guidelines. Okay, and again, you can go to a higher protection on any road you want, but with NACTO they do come up with a desired treatment with road based on speed and volume. Okay, Laurie, go to the next one. And then when we talk about separated bike lanes, there's different types of separations. Okay, you can go as low as what you see in the top left-hand corner there, which is just a delineator. Okay, and with a striped bike lane. Okay, or you can go down to the next one to the bottom, and it's a delineator. It's a bollard. So there's more of a fixed permanent structure. Or you can go as high as in the top right as a continuous barrier all the way down the street. Okay, so that's probably one of the highest protections. And then you see on the lower right-hand side, a raised median, okay, where you physically separate the bikes with a median on roadways. Laurie, go to the next one. And then here's some other type of separated bike lanes. The top left is, it's off pavement. It's called a raised lane. Basically, this is something that we're looking at on West Essex, on the West Essex project, okay? And we'll be doing that RFQ this year on that. Then you've just seen down in the lower left-hand corner where people have put striped a bike lane and then put planter boxes out there, okay? And then the top right, here's another one with the delineators and curb stops. So these are different methods of getting that separation. And then when the one that Liz just talked about was another separation is parked cars, is putting the bike lane against the curb, okay, and having cars parked on the outside. That would be just the opposite of what is on Woodbine right now, okay? And so that would be what would be the opposite there, okay? So that gives you an idea of, where those bicycle lanes lay and the types that are available for us, okay? Go to the next one, Laurie. And when you're talking about the bike lanes, the separated bike lanes, there's certain things you have to get into the planning perspectives. And then that's things like the bike network connection to make sure wherever this bike lane goes, it's connected to other bike lanes to get you someplace, okay? And Linden would be just a perfect one because we would go to Lindeman, Doughty Ferry, down to Geyer, down to the city park. So there's a perfect connection when we get the South Geyer, the Geyer Road project done and striped, okay? And then we have to take a look at the safety benefits, and then of course we got to look at the pedestrians and all the street users and how it affects the street, affects the people on the streets. The other one is existing and potential users. We're going to make sure that we're going to place the bike lane where there's existing users and where more people will use that bike lane. And then local support. I think when we talk about protected bike lanes, local support is a big one, okay? Because with that, there's a lot of times you're taking parking off of streets where people have parked and they need that parking, okay? And I think that's a local support. And that's something that we'll do with the Lindeman project, is that we'll probably be reaching out to the folks ahead of time to get more input on the bicycle lanes that we've recommended so far. And then we take a look at the roadway capacity, and how do bike lanes affect the capacity of the roadway and things of that nature. Then there's with a protected bike lane, you have to take a look at loading and unloading, because a lot of these, once you put these bike lanes up, if you don't have parking, then you don't have the parking, on-street parking there, then you got to watch how you use that lane for future access and things of that nature. And then emergency vehicles, there's some discussions about emergency vehicles and a narrow width of the lanes if we narrow them down too much. And then even physical constraints, like Liz was talking about, we can do a lot of this stuff on our pavement if the pavement's wide enough, because that's a physical constraint. Or then we get outside of the right of way and then are outside of the pavement, and then we have physical constraints off the street, such as, the biggest one is around here. Our biggest physical constraint is trees. You know, if we want to widen the street or put more paint that's widen the sidewalk, or put a wider, you know, a shared lane or something, it becomes our natural trees that become one of our physical constraints and things of that nature. And then we want to take a look at accessibility for ADA accessibility and accessibility for everybody with these bike lanes and things of that nature. And the other one we talked about was parking. Okay, that's a big one. We have a lot of on-street parking in the city throughout almost all of our streets. And then finally, we could get down to some of the things that for us, you know, maintenance. You know, that's why we like the buffered bike lanes, because we can easily plow the bike lanes and we can easily street sweep them with our current equipment. If we put up a physical barrier of some sort along the street, then we would have to take a look at either not maintaining those bike lanes without sweeping and snow plowing and things of that nature, or we would have to take a look at purchasing equipment that would fit down. There's one of two things. You either widen out your bike lanes to allow for your maintenance equipment you have, or you get equipment that fits within your bike lanes, okay? And that to provide the maintenance. And the other thing is delivery of services, trash and recycling collections. We have to really look at that, especially on streets with a lot of curb cuts, because what we don't want is our recycling trucks' arms to be reaching across a bike lane to pick up trash, okay? So we have to take a look at how collections, you know, just providing our services are affected by a bike lane, okay? And so that's some of the things we have to look at. And then the other stuff is just cost and funding, you know. We took a look at some things, you know, to do, let's say Lindemann, okay? Lindemann, we took a look at Lindemann, and to put in the buffered bike lane there with striping is about $15,000, okay? But then Liz actually provided us a contact with a company called Design Line, and they have a barrier system. It's a metal barrier system with some flexible, I don't know what you would call it, but you can do some different things with it, okay? But with that, that type of system is $50 to $70 a lineal foot. So on Lindemann, that would be between, I think, I can't find my numbers right now, but that's somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 to put that type of system in, because that's a very long, and that would be for a continuous barrier, okay? And when I say continuous, we would only have gaps at curb cuts and intersections, okay? So that would be continuous. That cost could go down based on, you know, the spacing that we have on them, but that's a continuous one. So you can see some systems for barriers are very high. The least expensive one, and that provides the least amount of protection, is the plastic delineators that you see someplace around curbs and stuff like that. You know, those things are like $35 a piece, but there's a high maintenance aspect to those. They'll get hit by the snow plows, will hit them, and there's just a lot of abuse to those because they're not stiff type. They're not a rigid type of element. So that's where, you know, we just wanted to go over that. Lindemann, you're exactly right. Lindemann's one of those projects that's coming up. You know, it's going to be going into the design phase, so I wouldn't recommend doing anything right now with Lindemann, because anything we put down now, we're tearing back up within the next 2 to 3 years, okay? So Lindemann is, you know, a prime candidate. I think in our next city council meeting, we're going to, if Chris is out there, he might be able to help me with Lindemann, but we're going to have some legislation from the city council to move forward with the program agreement for Lindemann's project. And then we'll go into our RFQ this year and do some, hopefully, but once we get our RFQ, go into design for the Lindemann project and move forward with the Lindemann project in a couple of years for construction. So that's where we are with Lindemann. So, I mean, really, I'm going to leave the conversation to you guys, because I can tell you you can do any bike lane you want, but there are physical constraints and there's some operational constraints that we have to be aware of when we talk about these things, and just, you know, be aware of them. And some of them cost money. Some of them are, things that we can easily design around. But, you know, that's really up to how the council wants to move forward, especially with protected bike lanes, because they do, they're great for bicyclists, but the people that live on the street, there is some issues with accessibility, how we provide services, and aesthetics. So, you know, I'll turn it over to Russ or turn it over to the mayor.
All right. Russ, you have anything to add, or we'll just go straight to council questions?
No, I don't really. I think Bill covered it very nicely. I think that he and Jonathan and Chris have done a good, thorough analysis on this, and it's really up to council the direction you all want to go.
All right, Liz, why don't you go ahead, since you brought this up, or not brought it up?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure, Bill, that I understand buffered bike lanes. It was quick. So that's just a stripe down the road showing where the bike lane is. Is that, am I right on that?
No, a buffered bike lane is basically it's two stripes with about a 2 to 3 foot buffer. Okay, so the stripe, you'll have the curb, a stripe, and then another stripe with hash marks in it. Okay, and that's a buffered bike lane. Okay.
Okay.
So those are typically somewhere about, the bike lane should be about 5 feet wide, and the buffer is about 2 to 3 feet wide. Okay. So
Okay.
that's a buffered bike lane.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Westwood
Well-
and Fillmore too. Bill is the other one where we have them now, if you guys see them there.
Right.
Uh-huh. Okay. And a buffered bike lane, there's no, you know, the snow plowing and all those kinds of things wouldn't be an issue, where if we had a protected bike lane there on Lindeman, there would be those issues of needing to buy a special piece of equipment to clear the bike lane and that kind of thing.
Correct. You would either oversize the bike lane to allow a street sweeper to go down there, and that would take, you know, right now a buffered bike lane is about 7 feet. To get one of our plows down, you would have to be about 12 feet wide.
Mm.
And to get one of our street sweeper down is about 12 feet wide also. Okay. So it would be a wider bike lane, but then what happens is that you run out of pavement width. Okay. Because if you do 12 feet there, 12 feet on the other side, doesn't leave much in the middle for the cars at all. Okay. So that's the trade-offs that you have to take a look at. Or you go out and there is equipment out there that is sized for bike lanes. Okay. There's sweepers that you can purchase to sweep just bike lanes. And there's equipment to plow snow in bike lanes that we don't have right now within our arsenal of equipment.
And if we were to talk the buffered bike lane, you mentioned both sides of Lindeman could be done that way.
Right. Right now it's slated to have a buffer lane on both sides. So basically we wind up with, I think out there, we'll wind up with 7 and 2 10-foot lanes. So we'll be narrowing down the lanes. Right now, you know, just got that center line out there and you can wander any place you want, but we will be, you know, the lanes will go down to about 10 feet with bike lanes, buffered bike lanes on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And there is no parking on Lindeman, I don't believe. Am I?
There's parking all the way on Lindeman. Yes.
Oh, there is.
Yeah. So we would be, regardless if it's a buffered, protected, or any bike lane, we would be removing parking up there. And that's why we probably need to get input before we do anything up there. You know, in the southern half of it, not a big problem. But I think when you get further north up there, you know, you have more curb cuts on the up there at the north end. And that's where it becomes more of an issue with parking. You know, the denser the curb cuts, the more on-street parking there typically is.
Mm-hmm.
But that southern half, yeah, there's very few curb cuts down there. So there's probably will not be a big issue there. And that's what happened on Doughty Ferry. That's why on Doughty Ferry, we have a bike lane on the north side, and we just have the share arrows on the south side. Okay.
Yeah.
is to allow parking on one side of the street.
Uh-huh, I see. Okay. Then back to Rose Hill, and again, you were saying that the formula that you use, NAFCO, is that what it was called?
NACTO.
Yeah, that came out that buffered would be the best.
Not the best, the desired, okay?
The desired.
The desired. But I'd always want to go back to saying that's the desired, because they have, if you go too high of a speed and too high of a volume, it's acceptable, but it's less acceptable, it's more dangerous. But if you go just the opposite direction, you can still have a protected bike lane, okay? But they have a range on their scale would be the desired use treatment, would be the desired treatment based on speed and volume.
Bill, is it possible on the south side of Lindeman, south end of Lindeman, to have the buffered, and on the further, as you get further north where the parking is an issue, could we put the parking against the travel lanes and have a bike lane on the inside next to the curb?
I'm probably going to say, right off the top of my head, I'm going to say no, just because of the pavement width, okay? Because if you have two 10-foot lanes, we only have enough room for two 7-foot lanes on the outside. So if you put one into those now you're needing 3 lanes, okay? Which now we run out of pavement width.
Okay. Moving to, and this will be my last thing, to Rose Hill, that it could be an option, the separated with the parking on the next to the traffic.
Yeah, I would say on Rose Hill, that section of Rose Hill from Geyer to Couch, okay?
Yeah.
As long as we know which part of Rose Hill we're talking about. On the north side, we have no parking right now. We have a bike lane, okay? On the south side, we have parking against the curb and a bike lane. We could reverse that. It's just swapping it out. I probably would. It costs us. Well, we could. Yes, we can do it, because we just have to grind the lines off and redo it. Okay. The only problem we have is that just recently up by Andrews, we put a new mid-block crosswalk up there with bump outs. Okay.
Right.
So we would have to remove the bump out, and then we have to do a pedestrian enhancement so bicyclists and the crossing pedestrians know that there's a bike that we've reversed the lanes. Okay. But yeah, we could grind out the lines out there right now on that side and restripe it and remove that bump out for at that pedestrian crossing.
Sorry, the one last question. Does Rose Hill connect? You talked about the importance of connecting to other pathways and what have you.
Yes, Rose Hill has, the bike lanes there from Couch to Geyer, but then it also has share arrows the rest of the way to Kirkwood Road onto Fillmore, Rose Hill, and then onto Fillmore.
Thank you.
All right, do we have anyone else? Mark, any comments, questions?
I would like to save my comments for the next topic.
Okay.
I want to kind of talk about Vision Zero, and we'll get to that then.
Maggie?
I'm assuming that the hill from the Lindeman Hill is not included. I want paths on there.
Correct.
I'm kidding.
When we talk Lindeman, we're talking north of Doughty Ferry to the city limit.
I know, but the hill's so much fun.
Oh, you always have to bring that up because I'm envious that you can ride your bike up.
Off hill, Maggie. Woo!
Yeah. It's a
You
good
only
hill.
go downhill on that portion. You don't go
Oh, I
up.
don't go
Only
downhill
down.
on that. You'd go too fast. Boy, I'd be afraid if the brakes went out or something, I'd just be dead. Yeah, I've never been downhill on it. That's all I have. I just wanted to give Tim grief.
Well, believe me, I'm envious that you can do that. Well,
Well, I have a life-threatening story to tell at some other time about a high-speed run down Lindeman, intersecting with Adams. But I guess I'm going to put some questions out there for Jonathan, Bill, and I think we should include Chris, because he should be able to take some of the incredible pressure we always put on Jonathan for supplying answers and information. And that is, so I'm pro bike, and I have a brand new bike, which someday I'm going to pressure wash all the dust off of it and actually get out and ride it. But to me, it seems like municipalities always fail if we try and piecemeal things. And I'd be interested in seeing how other municipalities, if they haven't, how we could have a phased approach to a development of a connected network of bicycling in the community. And I think that hinges on whether we're, because this is a quality of life issue, are we expanding bike paths and routes for the existing population? Are we looking for a future population? Are we trying to encourage a different resident to move into Kirkwood to utilize bike paths who love biking and that kind of thing? So it's just kind of a big concept kind of thing. So I'm wondering if either Chris or Jonathan or Bill or collectively, if you've discussed that or found any examples of that.
I'll give that to Jonathan.
Making sure that we have a network. Was that your question essentially, that making it?
Yeah. You know, if you're building, if you want to be completely and thoroughly, efficiently bike friendly, what does that need to look like, and what period of time does it make sense to do that? Where do you start?
Yeah. So
you know, think of it as creating a mass transit system, I guess. Would be similar.
Sure. So respectfully, we have done that. Honestly, in comparison to our other communities in the region, our bicycle pedestrian plan that was adopted in 2015, we are, from others' accounts that are professionals in the industry, we are one of the most active in implementing our bike network. So the big thing with bicycle networks is that they have to be incremental. You don't want them to create gaps and be unsafe, but they have to be incremental, and you have to be willing to improve upon them when you have funding or when you have projects going through, like we're talking about tonight, right? So while not everybody's going to be comfortable with sharrows and it's not everybody's ideal situation, we have been very aggressive in using those. And that is certainly the starting point for creating the network. You create awareness through the signage and the striping. You get bike drivers, right, motor vehicles used to seeing these things. You start to get the more avid bicyclists out using the sharrows, and then that makes drivers see them. And then when you get a chance, like we're talking about tonight, to make a more protected, to bring the level of stress down for more recreational bicyclists, when you get the opportunity to do that, it is then safer for them because people are already thinking about that, right? So I think we certainly, we have our bicycle pedestrian plan that is our network, and it's part of the regional bike plan as well. We're active with those groups and reporting. We report our implementation to the regional bike plan, and it gets updated through that regional bike plan about what we've done. So certainly, and Bill mentioned an example when Councilmember Gibbons asked the question about Rose Hill and the bike lane east of Geyer. That's a good example. It does transition from the striped bike lane to the sharrows, right? But due to the constraints that we have with on-street parking and curb-to-curb width, that's what we are able to do to get it to across Kirkwood Road, where we did create a little bike box to make it safer and friendlier for people stop there at the signal on bikes, created a designated area for them to wait to get it across Kirkwood Road at the signal. So we've used consultants to help us implement these things over the past 5 years, probably fairly successfully. I'll be immodest for a second or pat ourselves on the back here. I think we can always do better, but I think as far as laying the groundwork for a network, we are certainly doing that.
Good. Thanks.
And Wallace, also, we are looking at other communities. Chris, he coordinated with the city of Des Peres. So when we go up Lindeman with our bike lanes, they're going to use, I think, share arrows to take you all the way up to Manchester Road through their city. So that helps that interconnection between other cities also.
Okay. Good.
All right, I think that's all council has had a chance. I know Kara had to leave the meeting and Bob is not here. So is there any action or anything that needs to be taken tonight? Any direction? Oh, Maggie, I'm sorry.
I just saw a thing that said Bob Sears is joining.
Yeah, he was going to try it. Now I see it now. Yeah. All right.
Thank you to, I just wanted to thank Jonathan and Bill for, really studying, looking into that. Really helpful.
Absolutely.
Very good. So no direction or action from council tonight, or are you looking for anything from us? Russ, anything?
I think that looks like they're on a pretty good direction.
Yeah. No, I meant anything official. I mean, anything. Anything. I guess. All right. No votes needed. No motions needed. Okay. All right. Very good. And now we'll go on to our final item, which is a continuation of discussion started last week regarding the MoDOT project on South Kirkwood Road. All right, Russ, Bill.
Yeah.
Did you go right into it?
Yeah, we have reached out to a number of entities, including Metro, Vianney, City of Sunset Hills, to see if there's interest in working together or at least giving input into what may be a possibility working with MoDOT on this project. And Bill can give an update. Actually, the most pertinent information that is helpful to us is really what we've gleaned from Metro regarding their location of bus stops on Kirkwood Road following this project or during this project. So I'm going to let Bill take that.
After our last conversation, we did have Chris actually reached out to Metro, and Metro had met with MoDOT about a week or so ago, I think it was. And, down where we had those pedestrian incidences down by the Vianney entrance where the two bus stops are, Metro is looking at removing those two bus stops there and moving them to the north to the Kirkwood Commons area where there's going to be enhanced pedestrian crossings at that crossing. They're going to have, all legs were crossing and pedestrian accessible traffic signals there. So right now Chris just got it yesterday, a new preliminary plan that shows those two bus stops being removed from the project. With them removed from the project, there's probably no need for a mid-block crossing down there anymore because those two bus stops were the contributing factor to those incidences, people walking across the street between the two bus stops, basically. And Metro somewhat acknowledged that also because they were aware of jaywalkers in that area also. So that's one of the biggest things that came out of our week's worth of talking to MoDOT and things of that nature. Okay, so right now, let's go talk about the cost, the 50/50 cost share program. Without that element in the program now, we probably wouldn't be eligible for a 50/50 cost share because you have to have a project of $200,000 or greater for a cost share. And what we're looking at now, with removing that PHB, the likelihood of removing that PHB, we're only looking at something that may be between around maybe $50,000 to $75,000, because we would still recommend filling the gap sidewalk on the west side of Kirkwood Road from Big Bend to the BNF railroad track. And then we would recommend the continental crosswalks that the city would have to cover the cost of those continental crosswalks and its ongoing maintenance of those crosswalks also with MoDOT, which is, that's not a huge dollar. And then we would take a look at the traffic signals there and have those, like we've done with other traffic signals, have them painted black and have the lit street signs to match the rest of Kirkwood Road in that area. So that's what we would be looking at right now, but those would all be under $200,000. So that's something that we would most likely fund through our capital improvement program if we decided to go that way. As we talked before, if there's any other projects that we want to look at there. One of the things when we talk to MoDOT to remember also, if we want to come up with a bigger project, I know we've talked about bicycle lanes or something like that down there. We can still apply for an STP application this coming funding cycle, which we believe can be coordinated and match up with the project timeframe of this the Kirkwood Road of the MoDOT project. Because there's not a huge amount there, but depending on what type of bicycle facility we're looking at, okay? Because if we were looking at a on-pavement bicycle facility, we're probably gonna have to talk hard to MoDOT about that to try and get that, because you'd probably, because of the volume and the speed, you probably definitely want that to be a protected bicycle lane, okay? But there's some issues that come with that and the design of it. And we would have to get MoDOT's approval of that. But that would give us time to vet all that out by the next STP cycle. Now, if we wanted to put that bicycle lane off pavement, like by, having that, they're putting in 6-foot sidewalks, but if we wanted to widen that out, let's say another 6 foot, that's another much larger project. A much more costly project, more impactive, because the actual construction of something like that on one side or the other of the street, the construction cost is probably, well over $1 million, but the impact of right-of-way are going to be extensive. And I wouldn't be able to put a dollar amount on that, because you're getting into more right-of-way where right-of-way costs a lot more, okay? But that's the two differences of those bicycle lanes. Is on pavement, you'd have to go outside of there, or on pavement, we'd have to get MoDOT's approval. But off pavement, the construction cost accelerates quite a bit. And I think, we should take some time to vet that out and be ready for, if the council wants to, an STP application. Because just remember, we're going to have, right now at the staff level, we know we're going to be doing the Grants Trail study this summer, and we plan on putting that up to STP, okay, which that's going to be a good sized project up there. We'll be asked for an application. And if then the next one, if we want to put this one, and if it's a off pavement, it's going to be a substantial ask also. So we just have to take a look at what the council's direction is, but this is the time to talk about it. And so we can have it in the queue and be on time for our STP applications in the next round.
Bill, question real quick. Did you want me to bring up the slide that you sent me earlier today?
No, it was just which bus stops they were taking out and stuff like that.
Okay.
But that's where it is right now.
Okay.
But that's in their preliminary plan, is to remove those 2 southern bus stops. Chris, you got anything else to add?
I would just add that, you talked about connectivity with the bike lanes before, so we need to look at connectivity if we're looking at a protected bike lane or a separated bike lane along Kirkwood Road. Really, what does it connect to? I can't really think of anything that it connects to. You talked about a lot of right-of-way costs if we're going off the pavement in addition to retaining walls that would have to go in. Um, so there is substantial cost there for an off pavement bike path or multi-use path.
Bill, or Russ, can you remind us the time frame of what we're dealing with on this just tonight? I know we continued it because February 28th, I guess, was not a drop dead date. So can you just remind us of where we are on that?
Really?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, it really comes down to if we still want to put in for a 50-50 PHB at where those traffic signals are, we have to have an application in that's over $200,000 by April 1st, okay? If the buses, they're saying they're going to remove those 2 bus stops there, then we wouldn't put a PHB in there. There'd be very few warrants that would allow us to put it there, okay?
Right.
So that means then our deadline isn't until, February of 2021, and
22.
22, right. So we would just meet the next cycle's application cycle deadline, and we have time to vet things out.
So basically tonight, the main thing we want to decide is those PHBs, and you're saying that, that they wouldn't be warranted anymore. And so
if they still stick with their preliminary plan of removing those 2 bus stops, the need sort of goes away. But if they change their minds, let's say in 3 weeks, then there's a need there. But still, we could go back to through an STP project and try to get that PHB put in there. So that's the difference, is the timing, because right now in their preliminary plan, their new preliminary plan shows those 2 bus stops going away.
Okay. All right. Mark, I know you had something you wanted to say. I didn't have one to say, but you had some comments. So why don't you go first?
Well, you knew I did, yes. We some of us are still on a subcommittee for our Vision Zero program. And I tell you, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, is public safety, as well as everyone, cars, pedestrians, bicyclists, everyone being able to move safely throughout our city, okay? And we spent a lot of time, we studied a lot of data through Vision Zero. And we have such great ideas, and we've talked through the last several projects about a lot of different things. Bike lanes, raised crosswalks, PHBs. And I really think that we should have our overall focus on Vision Zero and let that be the umbrella and our guide to what we're doing. I think we need to use our bicycle and pedestrian plan with our wayfinding map and prioritize what we want to do based on that map and focus on what we can do through our Vision Zero program and focus on that first. Now, our residents tell us they want our pavement fixed. They want the streets fixed. That's got to be a priority too. But if we can focus our efforts and what drives us forward using Vision Zero and everything else tie in through Vision Zero, as far as complete streets and safer streets to school, Vision Zero should be what drives the city of Kirkwood and what we do and how we decide what's the priority and where we're going to spend the money, because our funds are limited, unfortunately. Start with that. Start with our Vision Zero plan and make that the priority and go from there. And, some of these areas, and someone mentioned, do we want bicyclists on a very busy street like Manchester? Do we want bicyclists on a state highway? Maybe that's not the best spot for a bicyclist. Use our Vision Zero map, use our wayfinding and our bicycle and pedestrian plan, and prioritize where we want our safety features, and then go forward from there. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because again, I feel very strongly about public safety in Kirkwood and keeping everyone safe. And especially after studying the crash data that we studied last year, you know, it brings that home, and we want to do everything that we can, and I think we should, to make Vision Zero in Kirkwood a complete success. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're muted, Tim.
And
Tim, there you
Some
go.
people like me muted.
Well, I didn't say anything for a
Somebody in the
while.
other room for
Some
sure.
people
but,
like some of us muted too.
Go ahead, Maggie.
I was just gonna say I totally agree with what Mark said. And since, I mean, nothing's been passed yet, but since the money is proposed to be put toward Vision Zero now, I would hope that we would go full steam with them and Altus. And also, as I said at the meeting, Ian Thomas is, I think, going to be a good voice from Altus. I have met with him on several times, haven't in a while, but several times, about Vision Zero. And certainly Columbia is different than us, but he's a good guy, and I think we have a lot of potential coming forward. And I would encourage us not to spend a lot of money until we kind of get an idea of where we're going in a very thoughtful and planned way.
Liz? Comment?
Councilmember Zimmer, can you, I've heard since June about Vision Zero. I still have no idea what it is. What I don't know. So I'm very interested in having a multi-use path in this construction that's going to go on Kirkwood Road. I think that it could eventually connect to the path that's coming over the Merrimack River. I think it could eventually connect maybe to Grant's Trail as well. So how do I know what Vision Zero? I'm not sure.
And I think that's one thing that moving forward that, I'd like to see us promote and talk more about. And we have talked about it before, but Vision Zero, the goal is zero fatalities, complete safety. And that also includes connectivity, and using our bicycle and pedestrian plan and our wayfinding map. What we do is figure out what connects to what and where we want to prioritize. So if we want to connect to Grant's Trail, we can ask, is it going to be safe to do that? Does it make sense to do that? And what safety enhancements do we want for that connectivity, and how do we pay for it? And, connecting to different areas such as Grant's Trail or the I-44 trail, that's something using a master map will allow us to do. And we can identify areas where we can focus on safety based on the crash data that we have. And, Councilmember Dewey will also probably say, hopefully, that, we looked at that crash data in great detail and
For hours.
Yeah, longer than that. And we
hours and hours.
And hours. And we looked at that data, and what we need to use that data is determine, okay, what's the safest way to connect to Grant's Trail? And how do we make that a safe path to get to Grant's Trail? And, having a master plan so we can prioritize and figure out where we want to spend our limited dollars to connect and make it safe. To me, that's what our Vision Zero plan will allow us to do. And Councilmember Dewey, you can add or correct me there.
No, I don't have anything to correct you about. The only thing I would say, Councilmember Gibbons, is that everything came to a screaming halt a year ago, when everything came to a screaming halt a year ago. So, and there was funding in the budget, and that had to be cut. That was one of the cuts. So the reason that it seems to have stalled is because we lost the funding to go any further with it. Now, like I said, we haven't voted on anything, but it's potentially there. And as far as I'm concerned, full steam ahead.
Quick
Mayor,
question,
if I could-
Russ, you might, this is
Yeah, if I
on,
could just,
Yeah, please.
since Councilmember Gibbons mentioned that she's not familiar with Vision Zero, I'll just give a little bit of a background as I understand it. Vision Zero is really a philosophical approach to design of multimodal transportation networks. It came out of some larger cities. Los Angeles adopted Vision Zero a while back. Some bigger cities did it, and then some smaller communities such as Columbia, Missouri. And they have had levels of success in addressing safety, and they've had market declines in severity of vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle accidents as a result of the implementation of Vision Zero philosophy. That philosophy is based on three primary criteria or inputs in evaluating all intersections and roadways and so forth. And those are speed, lowering speed saves lives, engineering and design, better engineered facilities as they come, as you look at improving facilities, look at better engineering with regard to all users and not just better engineering to move more traffic. I think that's a huge aspect of what Vision Zero is.
Yes.
And the third aspect was enforcement. And that's controversial because enforcement can sometimes have equity issues. So Vision Zero over the past few years has emphasized equity over enforcement. And that's a change that occurred over the last 3 or 4 years. Because when Los Angeles was doing it about 6 or 7 years ago, enforcement was a primary thing. And they felt that was, it was being targeted against minority communities and so forth. So there's been a shift in that third aspect of the philosophy of Vision Zero. And Vision Zero means a vision where there are 0 auto-caused fatalities.
And severe injuries.
Well, and that's right. They've added severe injuries. At first, it was fatalities. But I've been familiar with Vision Zero for a number of years. We talked about complete streets. Complete streets feeds into Vision Zero.
Absolutely.
They work together.
Absolutely.
So, you know, what the city council has, I think in a forward-thinking mode, done here by allocating funding for what's called a Vision Zero action plan. It puts your money where your mouth is regarding this philosophy. And they have allocated $155,000 in the next fiscal year budget to address implementation of the Vision Zero philosophy in the city of Kirkwood. And, you know, we've had discussions about incremental changes along the way, and we've heard from citizens. And, you know, a huge part of Vision Zero is listening to citizens. It's a huge aspect because citizens are walking the streets. They're the ones riding the bikes. So, you know, that's a huge important citizen engagement, surveys, analysis. But the engineering side is huge as well. It's really a shift in the way roads are designed. And that's where we came with things such as the raised intersection in front of the Performing Arts Center, the raised intersection at Peak, Geyer, and Doherty Ferry. Those are incremental Vision Zero approaches, but they're not part of the holistic approach that Mark Zimmer is saying we need to take before we do too much more of these things, because you start chasing your tail a little bit. And that's what we want to make sure, that priorities are based on data and metrics that are important and have been vetted. So that's a synopsis of where I think we are right now. And I think what Mark was talking about was that let's get into the Vision Zero action plan before we start getting too deep in projects here and projects there without knowing exactly all the connectivity issues, all the safety issues, all the impacts, seen and unseen, that could result.
Well, wouldn't
You've
protected
got it, Russ.
lanes be in the same category then? I mean,
Yeah, I guarantee you that protected bike lanes will be part of the overall analysis regarding Vision Zero.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge portion of it.
Ivy?
Two other things. One is the other E to it is education. And is a great amount of programming for educating people of where to ride, how to ride, where to walk, how to walk, where to drive, how to drive. The other piece that's new this year, and Vision Zero has just started with this just a few months ago, is that in part of their, along with the education, but a little bit outside of it, is that they have acknowledged that human beings are flawed, and we all make mistakes. I look down when I put the CD down back into my CD player in the car. I don't often, but I do every once in a while. We all make mistakes. So how do we engineer, educate, and build our roads so that it allows for people making their mistakes? Because they're gonna make mistakes. So how do we make it so that the mistakes don't cost so much? And that's kind of a whole new avenue for Vision Zero, which I like a lot.
Wallace has been way too quiet.
Yeah, by the way, Liz, the Vision Zero subcommittee is chaired by Maggie and Mark and Kara. So that's why Maggie and Mark have been
talking
very,
a lot.
very vocal.
Yeah, yeah, and we're really excited to get going again. Yeah.
Wallace, anything to add right now?
Well, of course. Well, let me say this one. I'm curious in terms of Councilmember Zimmer and Councilmember Dewey, because what I'm hearing is they're saying, let's not do anything to apply Vision Zero or Complete Streets concepts to this once in a 25-year shot at one of the highest trafficked areas in the city at Big Bend and Kirkwood Road. Why aren't we, we've got some really intelligent, talented people on our staff, engineers and the like, who understand and are able to read. There is a forest full of information that's published about Vision Zero and Complete Streets. Why aren't we simply tasking them to say, hey, look at these philosophies and apply them to this roadway? Period. Done. But hold on. We don't, in my opinion, and I'm opposed to it, I don't understand why we're going to spend $150,000 to have some folks come in and read a first edition book to us that we can all read. We'll all have to read anyway. Third-party contractors in those scenarios, if we're building a nuclear reactor, I'd buy that, but we're not. We've got decades of experience in the director of public works. He's got young, talented subordinates. Tell him, hey, take Vision Zero and Complete Streets, lay it on this, and let's get this done for now. It's a great pilot for us. I don't think we want to risk the safety and the convenience of riders and users of that area for the next 25 years if we miss this opportunity. So I'd be glad to hear your response to that. Mark Garmaggy.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, I'm not either.
As long as we say within this precepts.
We already have the
Well,
wayfinding map. We have the bicycle and pedestrian plan that we should be looking at first.
But what I didn't hear you say
I'm not
was,
saying we
let's
should
apply
not
that
be
now.
focusing on safety issues at Big Bend and Kirkwood Road. We absolutely should.
And
Okay,
Bill
maybe I'm the
Benson,
only one.
Bill Benson and Chris and Jonathan and everybody are well versed. They've been in on Vision Zero from the very beginning. They're incredible, and they're going to do just fine with it. And
So am I hearing you say that what we're tasking them to do right now with that stretch of roadway is to apply as much of Vision Zero and complete streets that is applicable at this time, and then give us a bill?
I can answer that.
Thank
We've
you.
Well,
passed-
I'm thinking, well, Russ, what I'm asking is that what the council members are asking you and the
Okay.
staff to do?
Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead, Russ. You go ahead. And I think
I was just
Mark
gonna
and
say
Maggie
that
were just. Yeah,
We've taken our lead from city council on this, and we have, as a city staff, prioritized that approach in every single road project for the past 4 or 5 years, and really even more in the past 2 to 3 years, because
Correct.
city council adopted the Vision Zero approach in that time frame. Because we had talked about complete streets for a long time. We talked about getting a complete streets policy, then an ordinance, and that morphed into a Vision Zero, more holistic approach to design, more holistic to planning with a purpose. Complete streets is more of an end result rather than or it's more of an incremental way to get to the end result that Vision Zero envisions. It's a portion of it. And that's how it morphed. But I can assure you, and Bill will verify this, and I think Chris will as well,
Absolutely.
that our directive throughout every road planning project right now is what can we do to employ the safest practices and that make sense for the location, appropriate design. That's why you see the bikeways that are selected, where they're selected, they follow the plan, they follow the appropriate type of bikeway in that location. That's why Bill is proposing on Lindeman and on Essex, the appropriate type of bikeway is engineering analysis is identified through the Vision Zero viewpoint and perspective. Anything you have to add there, Bill? I mean, that's accurate, is it not?
It is, and I'll go back to planning. Okay, I'm not a planner. Okay, but that's why we have Jonathan. Okay, but planning, you plan your work, you plan, you prioritize your work, and we don't gain a whole lot by just skipping around from place to place to place. Okay, we have to lay out a plan. And once we have a plan in place, that's why we've been so successful on our bicycle plan. When we did that in 2015, I think it was, the PED bike plan, it came up with a plan. And once that plan got adopted, it gets passed down to the staff. And we started implementing that plan. The day after, not the day after, let's say the year after, we brought that into our pavement management program plan, and we start planning the execution of the plan. And without a plan, you're not taking advantage of the economies of scale and things of that nature to get your work done. Because if, like I said, when we're repaving a street, then we look at the bicycle PED plan and we put the pavement markings down in according with that plan. Okay. And we have a plan. If we want to change the plan, we need to change the plan if we don't like the plan. But that's what the staff has. And we're not looking at 1 year out, we're looking 2 and 3 years out. So that's how we have to look at our planning process, is that it's like, oh, look, today we have some place that we want to do something. That's not fair and reacting or anything like that, and the funding of it. That's why we're so active in our grant cycles, because we know our grant cycles are 3 to 4 years long. So that's the type of planning you're doing.
Well, can I bring us back to
Yeah.
So what we're focusing on right now is the railroad tracks to city limits on Kirkwood Road. So I guess the question is, because I've seen some kind of a little waffling as to what type of bike path or shared use or whatever. Simply tell us, what does Vision Zero require for that corridor and the bill for that, regardless of whether we can get an STP or 50-50 matching. What do we need in order to meet Vision Zero in that corridor? Is that what we have in front of us?
I think, no, Vision Zero has all levels of it. And I think the biggest portion of Vision Zero that's being done there, is already being done by MoDOT, is the connectability of sidewalks that we do not have. That is an element of Vision Zero. You know, you can have a Vision Zero from very low things to signage, okay? That's a Vision Zero element. Sidewalks is Vision Zero element. Pedestrian hybrid beacons are elements. Raised intersections are elements. Those are all elements that you apply. You don't have to apply every last one of them. You can apply 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, so I guess what I'm concerned with is you really handcuff the council's ability to make the best decision when you don't give us the best option. You know, so it appears to me now we're making a financial decision here more so than one that says, how do we accomplish Vision Zero on that stretch of road? Now, if we get to that point and it's a price that we can't bear, then okay, we'll say, okay, what's step 2? But you started at, let's just, for sake of argument, you started at 3, and here's our price, and we'll never know what it took to get us to 1 and 2. Does that make sense?
All right.
Yeah, it's.
Well, we've got, oh, you know what, I apologize. Wallace, do you have anything more before we, and I'm going to come back to it.
No, I just to wrap it up, if we're going to do Vision Zero, then let's do Vision Zero, not almost Vision Zero.
Bob, you're on there, and I'm sorry I missed you earlier.
No, it's okay. I apologize to everybody for arriving late. I'm a bit confused over Wallace's question and then the response, which contained a lot of good information. I'm not being critical of the response. I'm just not sure Wallace's original question was answered as I understood it. I understood Wallace, and I would have the same question, are the statements by Liz and Mark, are they, I mean, not Liz, but is Mark's comments and Maggie's comments suggesting that we delay or pass on certain things in this current thing before us on Kirkwood Road, or wait until the Vision Zero can be accomplished, because we have a timing issue. And you know, I agree with Wallace that it is a once in a 25-year time span. So should we go forward with what's on the table now and commit to that, or do we, for lack of a better term, hold out somehow to try to get bike lanes and other things incorporated? That's how I took Wallace's question. I may be wrong, but
No, I think that's it. Let me kind of bring that, not to the end, but together. Let me ask Russ and Bill on this. We've got to, unless we do something with the PHP, which sounds like probably won't happen. We've got time. How does, because let me go back. I think this is on the bike and ped plan, is it not? Is it not that stretch of Kirkwood Road? It's not. I thought I thought someone
That's,
said that
that's
the
a
last
very,
meeting.
that's a very important question. This stretch of Kirkwood Road is not a bike path on our bicycle pedestrian plan.
Okay,
So there might be some confusion because St. Louis County just did, this past year, did their bike walk action plan. And it shows up on their on the county's bike walk action plan from Big Bend south. So it is, county identified it as a physically separated bike path. And that's what we brought that up to MoDOT in our early meeting. And Bill, please correct me if you heard differently, but if that physically separated option, well, on street at least with separation, was not going to fit into their timeline, was my impression. Bill, did you take that differently?
Right. I think they had, MoDOT had great hesitation in giving us a straight answer to on pavement separated bike lanes.
But to be clear, sorry for the first point is, yes, this is actually not on the city's bicycle pedestrian plan as a designated bicycle route. So.
right. So there was some confusion over that, so I'm totally out of whack on that. So it is not on ours. All right. So if we want to look at, Bill, you mentioned the three different components. So in terms of Vision Zero on this particular stretch, I mean, is it, since we've got time, I guess, is it possible to look at it and again, kind of get into Wallace's point and look at it from 1 to 5 or whatever those numbers are? Here's the minimum that we that can happen with Vision Zero, whether it's what MoDOT's doing right now, to what the most we could do, whether it is to protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks, or whatever. Is that too much maybe to get information on that in the near future so we can talk about that?
No, absolutely not. We can, like I said, time is not our enemy. Time is going to help us out to get this out better, to have a better program.
Right, understood.
For that section of Kirkwood Road.
Right. Because I don't know if, and I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth. I'm not sure Mark and Maggie were saying just wait until Vision Zero is over to do anything. I don't,
we weren't. That was
no. We've been using Vision Zero tenants all this
Correct.
time. We just haven't made it an official situation.
And that's why we need to promote it, so we all know that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
So in terms of tonight, and I think we know the answer, unless the council wants to put in that PHB where the bus stops, Metro is in the preliminary plan, moving the, getting rid of them, there's no action we have to take tonight, correct? Is that an accurate statement?
Correct. If you take no action, we're not going to be submitting a 50-50 cost share application for that PHB.
Right. I mean,
But I'm still interested in investigating further into the multi-use path, even, especially if the county's going to be talking about putting one in south of Big Bend, then we should be talking about putting one in north of Big Bend.
But that doesn't have to be decided tonight. Is that correct, Bill, Russ?
I mean, let's put it this way. If you want that to be the 50-50 application, then we got to decide that tonight. And it's going to be tough to get an application and a cost estimate by the deadline of the application.
Well,
it actually lends, I would add that it actually lends itself better to an 80-20, because that's going to be $1 million project.
Yeah.
It's not a 50-50 project. So I would not recommend city council follow through on a 50-50 on that.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's on that list. That's what we have time to work at now.
Okay.
Not due until next, almost a year from now, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to, make that clear. So I based on what Chris and found out from Metro, I don't think there's any reason for us to go for the 50-50, because putting in the PHB it just doesn't make sense right now. Now, if Metro comes back and changes it, well, then that's a different story. Does anyone disagree with that specific assessment?
Nope.
Okay, all right.
Hey, Mayor, I would like to know how conversations went with Sunset Hills.
They went quite well. I spoke directly with their city administrator, and she indicated that the only work that they are doing regarding that project is working with a developer on a right turn lane into his property.
Okay.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Russ.
Mhm.
All right. So I think where we are is that no action will be taken tonight, and we've got time to look at the different, the Vision Zero, extremes, so to speak. I use that term, and maybe in the near future come back and just talk to us about that and what they are, and maybe some costs, so we can start looking into that. So does that make
No problem.
sense? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
no problem. I think that's the direction we need to go, knowing that if we're looking at the possibility of an 80-20, which I would recommend for next February, we need to evaluate what projects might work and give you all options there, just as Wallace was suggesting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else on this from anyone tonight? All right. Yeah. Any other business we have? I don't think so, Laurie. I think we've hit everything. So, all right. Well, with that, this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see everybody next Thursday.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.